it seems like that's a quite different skill set, right? I mean, you need a completely different skill set for running your own landscaping company and driving the truck and taking care of the lawns, and then a separate skill set for managing your crew while you're not there, and then a completely different skill set again to grow this thing into a franchise with over 100 locations in several different countries. What has that transition been like?
Definitely lawn care and mowing is not my passion, but seeing these owners being able to grow a business, make it profitable, turn their business around using the systems and procedures, that's super fulfilling. So regardless of whether it was, baking pies or mowing lawns, it's something I'm super passionate about helping these owners do. And our goal in growing to 1,000 locations is changing the expectations of the customer.
Mike, if somebody wants to say start their own Augusta Lawn Care, right? They want to become a franchisee. What are some realistic expectations? And what does the revenue growth look like? And how much work do they have to spend on the business, not in the business?
Yeah, someone could technically start inside of Augusta Lawn Care for around $50,000. We don't usually recommend that. We recommend them being more on the $80,000 to $100,000, ideally $100,000 as a form of investment.
And what type of services do you find are kind of the easiest ones to learn to do well, and are the easiest ones to rinse and repeat, and are the most profitable?
Yeah, so most profitable up front is going to be your projects, mostly because you collect so much cash up front.
And what do you do, or what do you recommend that your franchisees do during the off season? Do they do any snow removal or anything else that they can do in the winter?
So solving Q4 collapse, as we call it, where one quarter of the year you just have a brutal P&L. To do that, we've had several different initiatives. One is snow. If you have the right market, you can do snow. We also have started AugustaLights.com. So a completely new brand inside of Augusta, just do Christmas lights. And that is, again, to supplement the fact that most of us are really slow during October, November, December. And so there's other things we do in terms of winter services. What we try to do is we convert our mowing customers into a recurring service throughout the winter where we do other services for them.
You talked about pay for performance, and what other business ideas are you kicking around, and where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Copilot, CRM, and Augusta Lawn Care and the media. Those are the three. And our plan in the 10-year window is to go public with those three and kind of have a three-legged stool, be able to get customers at a negative customer acquisition cost to the media side, and then be able to channel it in towards the software and the franchise.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is Mike Andes. Mike is a successful entrepreneur. He has been able to scale his landscaping business to 150 locations. He's the CEO and founder of Augusta Lawn Care. He is an author of 2 books, and he's a very successful YouTuber as well, with over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. Mike, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Gabe. I appreciate it.
Mike, it's amazing. I'm always amazed at how people find the time to do everything. It seems like you are running a large franchise. You're at 150 locations and growing. On top of that, you make YouTube videos and you have an amazing YouTube channel. I encourage everyone to subscribe. You have written 2 books. I believe you also have a company that helps with payment processing and employee management. How do you find the time to do it all?
Yeah, ultimately, if you have really good people that can do those things better than you, it's really a matter of finding a vision that they can rally around. So, retaining great talent many times comes down to, are your goals big enough for their goals to fit inside of? And so having a large goal, having a large vision allows you to be able to attract talent for other people that have large goals, but they fit inside of yours. And that's really the goal, is to be able to attract entrepreneurs that can work inside of the companies. And so in an entrepreneurial company, many times it's the founder that puts forth the vision, but then attracts other entrepreneurs to work inside of the company that would otherwise probably go start their own thing and start a small business. But inside of that ecosystem can still thrive and be able to have their entrepreneurial pursuits, and that itch sort of scratched.
So Mike, Augusta Lawn Care, it's a landscaping business, and you've been able to scale it. I think you're at 150 locations plus at the moment. What strikes me as quite incredible about that is landscaping is a generally low barrier to entry, right? Pretty much anyone with a pickup truck can call themselves landscaper, can start getting into lawn care, garden care, that kind of thing. So first of all, I think it's very difficult to even get started in that business because there's always so much competition. There's always more new competition going in and trying to compete with you. And at the same time, you're able to scale. And I feel like you solve 2 different problems at the same time. One is you were able to find success being a landscaper, and two, you were able to scale. And maybe take us through, how did you get started in landscaping? And when did the light bulb go off and say, you know what, I can scale this, I can franchise this?
Yeah, so I started mowing grass when I was 11 years old and just pushing a lawnmower around the neighborhood, mowing grass. Did that to basically pay my way through college. I knew I was going to start college early. And so when I was 13, I started college and did my pre-med. I was planning to become a surgeon. And so that was kind of like the goal the whole time. So to pay my way through, my parents didn't have any money. They had never gone to college. I kind of saw like college as my way out. And so at 18, I was planning to go to LSU for actually getting my MD, my medical doctorate. And before doing that, I canceled my application, and we did not go there. And the reason for that was because I had started to shadow a lot of physicians here in the U.S. and just realized that I didn't want to do the same 4 or 5 procedures for the rest of my career. I also went to Africa and volunteered there for a couple months in some orphanages and hospitals in and around Nairobi. And in doing that, I was able to see like all sorts of cool stuff. I did like surgeries and birthing, and like I spent a lot of time in the pediatric burn unit. We did injections and like, really cool stuff. Coming over here, I was like, look, I'm going to be stuck in the same thing for like, 4 or 5 procedures maybe for the rest of my career if I really want to specialize in either heart or brain surgery. And that wasn't appealing to me. I always had kind of the entrepreneurial itch. I had already started the business. So like, I didn't want to be doing the same thing for the rest of my life. And so that's when like the only thing I knew how to do at that time was mow grass. So that's when I dropped out of medical school. I started doing my MBA at night. So from 6 to 10 p.m., I would go to the university and do my master's in business administration. But at the same time, that's when I started Augusta Lawn Care. So that was a little over 10 years ago. And then 5 years into that is when we franchised. And what kind of caused that was I was originally in the first couple of years of the business growing very quickly, but really everything came down to me running it. There was no systems, there was no procedures. And that all kind of came to a head when in a day I got in an accident. I was underneath one of the dump trucks and my hoodie got sucked up into the PTO. The PTO is the power takeoff, the thing that spins underneath the dump truck. And so basically in an instant, I got kind of sucked up into that, ended up, falling out fortunately and surviving. If you want to see, some gruesome accidents, go on YouTube and just see PTO accidents. Most of the time people don't survive. They get a hand or a piece of clothing caught in those. But I was kind of in the hospital and then kind of recovering for a couple of weeks. I was away from the business. And in that period of time, I realized that the business had no systems. I was literally on the hospital bed, contacting my crew about what the next job was through FaceTime. And so started to create procedures and systems in the business that could run without me. And I started documenting those on YouTube. And it was great. First year or two, I started landscapebusinesscourse.com and started trying to get the message out with all these systems I was trying to make. And I realized that people just looked at me as a content creator. They looked at me as like a consultant, someone outside. So that's when I started with, hey, I'm going to franchise this thing. I have skin in the game with these owners, and I want to see the impact of the systems on their businesses. And that's when we franchised Augusta Lawn Care 5 years ago. Now, we just about 170 locations now in the US, Canada, and Australia.
That's incredible. It seems like that's a quite different skill set, right? I mean, you need a completely different skill set for running your own landscaping company and driving the truck and taking care of the lawns, and then a separate skill set for managing your crew while you're not there, and then a completely different skill set again to grow this thing into a franchise with over 100 locations in several different countries. What has that transition been like?
Yeah, like ultimately, my passion is not necessarily for mowing grass. Actually, I'm allergic to grass, so like when I was out in the field working, I would have hives break over my chest, my throat would constrict, my eyes would get puffy. It was not fun. So definitely lawn care and mowing is not my passion, but seeing these owners being able to grow a business, make it profitable, turn their business around using the systems and procedures like pay for performance or estimate videos, and having a systems-backed business can run without them, that's super fulfilling. So regardless of whether it was, baking pies or mowing lawns, it's something I'm super passionate about helping these owners do. And our goal in growing to 1,000 locations is changing the expectations of the customer. Because right now people think of a landscaper as someone who rolls up in a beat up truck with oil dropping on the back of it. They have no uniform. The truck isn't painted. They're not insured. They're not licensed. They can hardly speak English. And so to change that expectation or to change the industry, our goal is to change what the customer expects. When they call, they expect they have phone to be answered 24/7. They expect a credit card on file. They expect automations. They expect software. They expect robots to be implemented wisely and thoughtfully. And so the only way for that to actually change the industry is for us to get in and start competing with every other landscaper, and then them have to change because the customers expect it. And the reason they have to adopt pay for performance is because, Augusta Lawn Care is in town, and they will attract the best talent because they can pay people significantly more. And so that's really the objective in it all. And so whether it be, starting Copilot CRM, like the software side, pay for performancesoftware.com also, like the goal is to vertically integrate the industry to where we can kind of control all aspects of it. And then we have that impact on the industry as a whole.
Tell me more about pay for performance. It seems like it's a different model to, is it more of like a employee payment model, employee evaluation model? What does it do differently than other similar types of software?
Yeah, so typically, and you don't even really need the software. Like I give away the training on this for free. And then the software is like, hey, if you want to save a little extra time in calculating it, use the software. But ultimately all it is like the harder you work, the more money you get as an employee. And essentially how that breaks down is you get a percentage of all the labor revenue that you earn in the business. And so the software helps you calculate it, but ultimately it's just a percentage. So if you make $100 of labor revenue and you make a third of it, you make $33. And so that means that the more efficient I can work throughout the day and the customer's still happy, I will make more money. And most time when people hear that, they're like, well, then they're going to go super fast and do a bad job. Well, then you have yellow slips. And yellow slips are essentially a way to be able to ensure that any bonus that is on top of base pay can be taken away from the employee if they do a poor job, if there's callbacks, if there is damage cases. And so there needs to be a counterbalance of quality with quantity. So the quantity part is like you get more money the harder you work. The quality portion is if you have yellow slips and callbacks and you lose customers and do damage cases, well, now that money is going to be taken out of your paycheck.
So it sounds like it's a compensation model where an employee would get a standard base pay, and on top of that, they would have the ability to earn bonuses, right? If they perform
Correct.
a job very well in a fast pace. Got it.
Exactly.
And this sounds like a completely standalone business. I mean, it's complementary to Augusta Lawn Care, but you can apply this to other businesses as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just about any home service, anytime you sell labor. So anytime you're like, oh, I charge an hourly rate or I have laborers, then this can be applied. And I think it's indicative of like what's best for the team member. Like an A team member has options. They can work at other places. And so the most discouraging thing for an A player to have to deal with is you have to work with a whole bunch of B players. They're hustling all day long. The B players are taking a nap. They're taking smoke breaks. They're taking long lunches. It's extremely demotivating. And what's not fair is that the A player might get $1 or $2 more per hour, 5 or 10% more. That's not fair, especially when given the fact that most times when it comes to hourly wages, it's based upon like how long you've been around. Like it's not fair that someone's been for 10 years working at this company, so they make $25 an hour. The person who just got started last week is hustling, grinding, making companies significantly more in profit, but is making $20 an hour because they're just simply new. And so it's really a meritocracy by which the harder you work, the more money you make.
Mike, if somebody wants to say start their own Augusta Lawn Care, right? They want to become a franchisee. What are some realistic expectations, right? Take us through how much money should they set aside, what kind of equipment they need to buy, and what does the revenue growth look like, and how much work do they have to spend on the business, not in the business?
Yeah, like someone could technically start inside of Augusta Lawn Care for around $50,000. We don't usually recommend that. We recommend them being more on the $80,000 to $100,000, ideally $100,000 as a form of investment. The reason we say that is because then they have the capital to actually scale, get a few trucks, get a few employees right from the rip, be able to spend money on marketing. Because the goal is really in the first few years to be able to grow past $500,000 in annual revenue. Now, could you do that faster if you had more capital? Yes. But to be able to grow past $500,000 in revenue in those first few years is the goal. And then we go into what we call profit mode, where now when we get new leads, we're just not trying to grow and expand. We're not trying to get more trucks and more equipment. We're just going to raise our prices, and that's going to lose some customers. That's fine because we have more leads coming in, and keep raising prices whenever we hit capacity. And so our goal ultimately over the next few years after that is to get to $800,000 in annual revenue with a $200,000 net profit. And that's kind of like the model. Is the first few years you're growing to $500,000. Some people do it very fast in their first year, but 3 years is that's very conservative, especially if you don't have tons of capital. Grow to $500,000 and then throw it into profit mode, raise prices each year as you hit capacity, and then be able to get to that $800,000 in revenue, $200,000 in net profit. That's kind of like the model that we built, and it can go faster if you have a lot of capital, but you're going to burn that capital in trying to get, say, that level in, say, 2 or 3 years versus 5 or 6.
In your experience, how many trucks and what sized crew do you need to hit $800,000 a year in revenue?
Yeah, so our target is to stay under 8 employees. So that way one manager can manage it. Again, we're trying to build this as a copy and paste model that you can have multiple locations and not be fixed to that location. If you start having more than 8 employees, it's very difficult for a general manager to manage that number of people by themselves. So like we handle all the admin stuff. So phone calls, emails, payroll, we can handle all that here at Command Center for the owners. What the general manager needs to do is lead the team. Well, just 6 to 8 people is really as much as most people can handle. And so if I start going 10, 12, 15, you can do this as an owner, but good luck trying to find someone that's going to be able to do that without you being around. And so if you're trying to build a business based on systems and that other people can run, I want to build it in a way that my frontline team member that maybe worked for me for a couple of years is super trustworthy. I can actually groom them into becoming a general manager, hand the location off to them, and move on to the next one. And so we really focus on that copy and paste approach. And more than 8 people, I start to see a lot of issues, mostly because you have to get usually a second overhead person, an estimator, or an office person to start managing the business. Now you add that overhead. Now you've got to grow to 1.5 million just to start becoming profitable again. And so that's really been our sweet spot. 6 to 8 employees kind of hit that level.
And what type of services do you find are kind of the easiest ones to learn to do well and are the easiest ones to rinse and repeat and are the most profitable?
Yeah, so most profitable up front is going to be your projects, mostly because you collect so much cash up front. If I'm doing a $5,000 job, I'm immediately able to get $2,000, $3,000 in profit from that job. Awesome. But in terms of what we actually go after is the recurring revenue. It's better from a valuation perspective if you try to sell the business. It's also easier in terms of simple services for us to be able to hand off to a general manager. It's also something that once I fill up my capacity and fill up my route, I can start raising prices to my customers, and that's when the profit really starts to roll in. Because if you're doing a good job and you're charging someone $40 per cut and you raise it to $50, they usually stay with you. 95% of customers will stay with us, even if we raise prices 20, 25%. However, if I can raise my prices by 20 to 25%, that just went straight to my bottom line. And so that's the unique thing about recurring services. And that's why we really focus on mowing, property maintenance, lawn care, maybe small installs like installing some mulch or some flowers. But we aren't going after excavation, paver patios, retaining walls. That one-time revenue is how you can scale very quickly in terms of top-line revenue. But it's very difficult to sustain that because you don't have recurring revenue. You have no promise of the next job that's coming in. And for that reason, a lot of times, even the past couple of years with interest rates going up, project crews go without work for weeks and months on end. And we really would rather grow slower, but have it as recurring revenue instead of one-time work.
And what do you do, or what do you recommend that your franchisees do during the off season? Do they do any snow removal or anything else that they can do in the winter?
Yeah, like the number one reason why most home service business owners go out of business is because of the off season. And that's why home services, honestly, as a whole, stinks as an industry. It's because we have 3, 4, 5 months of the year, we have negative cash flow. And for that reason, you can't sell a business. It's very difficult to be able to retain employees. And so solving Q4 collapse, as we call it, where one quarter of the year, you just have a brutal P&L. To do that, we've had several different initiatives. One is like, yes, snow. If you have the right market, you can do snow. We also have started AugustaLights.com. So a completely new brand inside of Augusta, just do Christmas lights. And that is, again, to supplement the fact that most of us are really slow during October, November, December. And so there's other things we do in terms of winter services. What we try to do is we convert our mowing customers into a recurring service throughout the winter where we do other services for them. So for the locations that don't have snow, we're trying to sell them on a bi-weekly service, just like we would for mowing. Same price. We spend the same amount of time on their property. We do other things. We trim the bushes off their house. We edge the walkways, we blow off the debris. After a windstorm, we pick up any branches, we check their downspouts and their gutters, other value add services that we can do and keep that recurring revenue. And we try to keep at least 70% of those mowing customers on that recurring revenue basis throughout the winter as well.
What personality traits or character traits do you look for when you're trying to evaluate whether or not a franchisee has what it takes to be successful?
Yeah, like the biggest thing really for us is the culture side. Like, are they going to be a member of the community? What we call Augusta Nation. In any community, you have people that add to the community and people that subtract from the community. And so the more people you can get to add to the community, the stronger the community becomes and the greater value that everyone can derive from it. And so we're trying to get people that are trying to contribute to the community and not seeing like, what can I get out of this? Because there's plenty to get. If you go into a community with a bunch of people who want to give, you can take a lot with the mentality that they are going to be willing to give, share ideas, not try to hoard what's working well for them. They're going to want to be a part of that community. That's what we're really looking for. From a technical perspective, really from 0 to 500,000, the determining factor of whether or not they scale from 0 to $500,000 in revenue annually is whether or not they can sell. Can they actually knock on doors, do door hangers, upsell customers, increase their close ratio, do follow-up phone calls? After that, it really becomes a leadership game. Are you able to train up a general manager? Are you able to find and retain good employees? And that becomes much more leadership from strategy, determining whether or not you go from 500,000 to 5 million, for example. It's much more of a leadership game after that.
Like at the moment, you're located in the Pacific Northwest. Which parts of the United States are you currently most active in?
I think we're in almost all the states now in the US. And then we have, I think, about 15 locations in Canada. And we just started in Australia. So just one over there right now. Maybe two. Maybe it's two. But yeah, a lot of states. Now, from a distribution perspective, we're a lot on the East Coast, but it's also where a lot of the population is in terms of lawn care and landscapers.
And Mike, you've written books. You're obviously scaling Augusta lawn care. You talked about pay for performance, and like what other business ideas are you kicking around, and where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so like in terms of new ideas, you always get new ideas, but really like I kind of have set the groundwork for what we need to be disciplined on in terms of just get better at. So like it's really like Copilot, CRM, and Augusta Lawn Care and the media. Those are the three. And our plan in the 10-year window is to go public with those three and kind of have a three-legged stool, be able to get customers at a negative customer acquisition cost to the media side, and then be able to channel it in towards the software and the franchise. And so when that happens, our goal is to be able to take that money from the IPO and put that towards robotics. Because we believe whoever has the distribution, the franchise, and the software, Copilot, together with the funding required for robotics, will be able to actually use lawn robotics in a way that right now the technology is there, but no one has the distribution and the economics don't make sense yet. And so I believe in like 10 years, that will probably be making more sense. And we'll be able to kind of take that intersection, take our distribution, have the backend support like Command Center to run the robotics, and be able to take that market share then. So it's kind of like the long-term vision.
Amazing. Tell me about the two books that you currently have available on Amazon.
Yeah, so P4P, basically the software is a birth child of the book. And that's just why hourly is a failing formula. Kind of walks through like my story of why I had to implement P4P. And everyone that, for every reason that people would say it doesn't work or can't work for their business is like, look, all I know is like from 1 year, I went from breaking even to the next year making $280,000 in distributions and working in the business 5% of the time I did the year before. And so I hope to be able to pass that along to every small business owner. And the book is basically, that all encapsulates my story and then how it actually rolls out into the math of it. But also even the course is free too, mikeandes.com/P4P. And it basically breaks down how to do it in your business, regardless of whether or not you use the software. I could care less.
And I think the second book is called Zero Turn, correct?
So the second book is the very first book. There's actually three. So Zero Turn is the very first book, How to Start a Lawn Care Business. Then there was P4P, Why Hourly is a Failing Formula. The most recent one is the Total Business Turnaround. And that's basically how to turn your business around. There's 13 principles to do so. And on my YouTube channel, what I do is I fly out to companies and we turn their business around in one day. And so I basically took all those 30, 40 different companies we had done that for and basically made a roadmap in the book so you can turn your own business around. You don't have to fly us out there and be embarrassed with cameras in your face. Because the vast majority of home service business owners are struggling. And I know that after seeing hundreds and thousands of their P&Ls, like the vast majority might have a truck or equipment, but they're in debt. They don't make a lot of money and they work 80, 90 hours a week. And so the goal of the software and the goal of the franchise and the goal of the book and the turnaround shows are to help them do just that and turn their business around. And so the book is basically a roadmap to do that yourself. And so,
Mike, everyone can look at you and see the success, but give us an idea of what it takes. What does your typical week look like? And what does the grind look like?
Yeah, like, ultimately I love this. So like, it's not like I would exchange it. I definitely don't pity myself or feel bad. I also would say that most people probably shouldn't do it because if you don't love it, then, and you don't like feel compelled to do so, like you will burn out. So like, I would just preface it by saying that because the amount that I would sleep or the things that I would sacrifice, I don't think most people should do. It'll lead to burnout. And so, but yeah, like it's 7 days a week and it's been that way for almost 11 years now. And it's a grind. And so it's just a matter of like, what are you willing to sacrifice? And I believe that what you're willing to sacrifice is proportional to the success you have. And, sacrifice or regret is really the thing that I've always lived by. And like, I happen to believe I will regret in 10 years if I don't take this big swing and try to help the industry and really give back to the industry that I've gotten everything from. Like my family never had money, et cetera. And so like everything I've got from this industry, I hope to be able to give back to the community and to the other owners that were in positions like I was, where I realized the business didn't make money. I was working crazy amounts of hours. I hated everything about it. I was questioning whether or not I should have dropped out of medical school. I had people telling me that I was wrong for doing that. And I know there's a lot of people out there that in the same boat in blue collar and home service industries. There's a lot of people that maybe didn't fit in at school or they didn't have the funds or resources to go on to higher education or do something else in life. And there's a little bit more of a rougher background or family past. I believe that those people, if given the right tools and resources and education, they can do something really cool. And so I'm really passionate about hopefully making that happen.
Mike, I love your story. Where can people reach out to you to learn more about Augusta and the other business ventures you got going on?
Yeah, just go on YouTube, Mike Andes. You can find the turnaround shows. They're kind of fun to watch. I see businesses when they're struggling and how we kind of implement a few things to hopefully increase their business and turn them around. So yeah, check it out on YouTube.
Awesome. I'll put that into the show notes. Mike Andes, thanks very much for taking the time today.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.